now we're going to go to stage 2, and in this stage we're going to do the upper and lower sections of the background. So we're going to do this section and this section. And this time around I'm going for more, I didn't actually get a swatch out, but more in these sorts of tonings, not necessarily close to that, but more in those sorts of tonings. So the first thing is, am I going to go landscape or portrait? And then I need to actually draw, roughly draw my objects in. And that's a terrible pencil, just a second. You may have issues with the pencil going over the top of what you're drawing with. So I'm using a pastel. It's a pastel pencil. And I'm going to draw these objects here, which I can see okay, but you're seeing them a bit distorted. But they're basically 3 fairly simple little objects, already a little bit wonky. So that's kind of why I've chosen those objects. So I'm going to quite roughly draw those objects into place. Now you do some drawings first in your sketchbook to make sure that you've got the right proportions, but it's not about doing perfect objects, it's about getting a sense of them. So don't be too stressed about how they look. I'm not too bothered by how they look. And remember that oh God, I've had brain fade. What's his name? Oh dear. I'm not going to start again, so you just have to imagine. Morandi, that's it. Remember that Morandi wouldn't have worried about whether things were accurate or not. So you can see I've drawn the objects into place. I'm pretty happy with that. It's a bit rough, but it'll do the job. Possibly that should come up a little bit further. Like that. So I've roughly got those into position, and now I'm right to colour mix again. So same deal again. I've got those warm red, blue, yellow and white, and I'm going to mix up firstly the top colour. Doesn't matter which one I do first. So I'm going to start this time with yellow. Now yellow is not as strong a pigmented colour, so you generally have to use a fair bit of yellow to get it to cover successfully. And this is going to be much lighter, so I'm actually going to add white in now because it's going to help me to see. Now that looks very, very bright. So once I add some red into it, well, that red's very strong. So the red in this colour range is super, super strong, and that's going to be an issue. I should have put a lot less red in. Normally I would use I would show you with a palette knife, but I've put my palette knife somewhere and I just can't find them, and I don't know where they are. So we're making do. The main thing is not to settle, but really push this colour scheme, because the more we push it, the more complex the colours become. And you can see how this has become quite different to how it was looking at the start. Can you see how that blue just tones that down a bit, from looking very, very strong, a bit too strong, to just a little bit more subtle? You can see it there. That's looking pretty good. And that's going to go maybe a little bit lighter because it's gonna dry dark. That's better. Okay, so now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint. Did I say this was going up? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to paint, so it's going down the bottom, this one, around the pots, but I'm going to leave some little gaps so that that purple that's underneath is going to show through. It'll only be subtle, but it's going to show through. Even some of those dark some of these dark ridges, I can just leave them so that we can just make it out. Now I'm not using a super smooth brush, a super small brush on purpose, because I don't want things to get too fiddly. So I'm keeping a reasonably sized brush. And I would need to just keep an eye out to make sure that I've got all the spots. I haven't left something out accidentally like that inserting in there. I'm pretty happy with that. That's good. Now I've got to do the top section. So I've got the bottom section, but now I need to just work on that upper section. And this time I'm going to go with very similar colour, but I'm going to go much lighter and yellower. So I want this to be a colour that's similar, in the same range, so it's going to work with the other colour, but that's going to be just different enough. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that, and maybe a little tiny bit more blue. That's pretty good. So it's not wildly different. I might just add a little bit more white. White's the colour you're going to go through the most of. That's just the nature of the beast, just how it is. Not much you can do about that. That's why often white tubes are larger than, it still needs to be a little bit greenier. The other thing is I don't want you to over mix the colours, so don't go too crazy mixing those colours. Now this time round, same deal, I'm going to leave some edges between the objects and those two colours, quite intentionally. And I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's some slight variations because I haven't mixed it down really too much, and that's a nice thing to add. You'll also notice I'm turning the canvas board around just so that I can access parts easily. And again, I'm going to leave some little patches between those two lines. So what we're aiming for is for that purple background or ground, we want that to show through. Okay, so we want it to feel like this was painted on a purple ground. So there we go. We've got step 3. So we've